in first person? First? You were? What was it about it?
Just, I think that's where I usually always come from.
Okay, good, good. How many of you felt like you were most comfortable in second as a listening kind of presence? Receiving, good. And how many of you felt most comfortable in third? Yeah. It's just important to kind of notice that we actually have a preference and we actually have a habit, right? As I was saying earlier, when my husband and I communicate, I habitually speak in first and he habitually speaks in third. And it sets up certain kinds of issues, let's just say, not problems, but issues that if you're not kind of aware of it, can be problematic.
You might say if you know that it's habitual, there's no bitch. Kind of like a little, you know, read. That was kind of good. I thought I was kind of pleased with that actually. You know, but okay, I'll sit quietly. I'll just wait till my turn.
So in the
third person here.
That's
okay.
Yeah. So let's do a quick second person thing. So what I'd like you to do, because we didn't do introductions, I would like for each person to just quickly introduce the person they listened to, just one thing, their name and one thing you learned about them. Okay? Does that make sense? So let's start kind of over here. So who did you listen to?
I listened to Jeff,
Okay, good.
and I learned that it was a fairly, can we just share the experience? Is that?
Yeah, just one breath, one sentence, yeah.
His opening was that he had an observation that led him to realize he's not just this physical body.
Wow.
Is that fair?
Yep.
Nice. Good. And who did you listen to?
I listened to Heidi,
Uh-huh.
and she had an experience where there was 3 things that just happened, really what appeared at first to be really negative things, and she learned to just kind of accept them and make the best out of what happened, and see that there was probably a reason why all those things happened.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Good.
Before you go on, just name. Somebody gets some names. Your name is.
Well, Heidi's going to tell you my name.
Well, Heidi's gonna have to tell you. That's great. Excellent.
Jeff, Heidi, and now Heidi's going to introduce
Maribeth.
Maribeth.
Go by Mare though.
Mare.
We're first.
I learned from Mare that she, from an early age, was already quite sensitive to equality in the world because of a church experience that was putting humans way above everybody else. And she already knew in 4th grade that wasn't resonating properly with her. She'd like to go a more broad, equal way, and find her own way.
I just want us to marvel for just a moment the capacity that we have to take another person's perspective. And just from listening to each of your kind of introductions of each other and what you learned from listening, that your world just changed through listening to her.
Although I had the exact same experience,
Yeah.
and I never went back to church after that either. So.
Is that right? Yeah, so then that's another thing we can notice. Is when we receive another perspective, that we can also corroborate with our first person. That there's a commonality that often becomes apparent to us, as well as differences that become apparent. Just the fact that you can change perspectives. Now, this is taken for granted all the time, right? We don't actually really marvel at that. And there is a little bit of a habit around getting ensconced or taking perspectives and not being willing to shift them. So we're going to marvel at the very fact that we have this capacity. Okay? So go ahead, you all in the back. Do you want to introduce each other? One thing you learned about your person?
Well, that's John.
That.
Just
Is
in case.
that third person? That's it over there.
That has a second person identity.
So John, what was fascinating about listening to John's story is that he's got 2 different spiritual openings. Young, separated by about 40 years, and one was sort of blissful feeling of love, and the other one is more of a perspective, experience of perspective and darkness that he's trying to integrate right now. And and has done a great deal of that.
Beautiful.
I listened to Tom, and Tom told a fascinating story of going out alone in the canyons around here in San Francisco, I think, and not bringing enough water, and getting into a pretty rough situation where he ran out of water and he left his pack behind and traveled on and had to create, survival shelters, and had a visionary experience of a large 40-foot crucifix in the morning waking up, and then he went to another place, and I didn't get this ended by the time he got there, but it was a profound reevaluation of his life began.
Wow.
Where his relationships, his purpose, what his life had been, and that's where it left. It was just compelling.
Very cool. Wow. Glad you made it, by the way. Pam?
Well, I also listened to Tom.
All right.
And I think actually the other thing that I was thinking about your story was that you struggled and you struggled and struggled, and then you finally stopped. And that was when you kind of let go of the struggle, and you actually then stopped and really started listening and looking. That kind of stood out for me, I guess, in your story.
Thank you. I listened to both Eric and Pam. Listening to Eric, the thing that really stuck out for me was his feeling of disparity between his own internal experience with spirituality and what he hears from other people, and his struggle with that. And with Pam, it was really interesting to hear how your viewpoint of spirituality changes through your phases of life. I thought that was really interesting. I appreciate both of you sharing.
All right, so I'm just going to kind of heighten our awareness of it. So if you watch Tom, he's moving between these three perspectives all the time, right? So on the one hand, he's saying, "This is what I heard," which is about him. There's a moment, I don't know if you noticed in his talking with us all, where he started to address the whole group. Could you feel energetically? Started looking around to make sure everybody was included in what he was saying. It's a really subtle but powerful second person moment, because he's energetically making sure that everybody in the room is included. When he says that was really interesting, he's actually accessing some standard in his mind that's a third person standard around what constitutes something interesting, right? So you see, first, second, third, and then when he says, "I really appreciate you sharing," boom, back to second. It's a very powerful second person moment when he engages somebody and says, "Thank you very much." And the thing is that you're tracking all that, and you're moving with him, and the more you move to first, the more intimate it becomes, and the more you move to third, the more it becomes kind of a measure out here, and we're all feeling it as well. You can feel that movement, you can feel how that changes, but we're not necessarily conscious of the effect that it's actually having. So that's part of what we're interested in doing, is just kind of showing you, really pointing out how this is working. Okay? Cool. Joy?
Okay. I listened to John, and John doesn't consider himself so much a religious or spiritual person, but he had an experience in his 20s hiking up way up high on a peak in Yosemite, I think, where he just felt some perspective and saw himself as one part of a huge thing, and that experience he's taken and drawn on his whole life, and he kind of feels this connection that he's a part of a larger thing.
Yeah. Good. Do you want to just do a quick riff on part whole?
Maybe I'm gonna riff for a second on some other thing that's kind of related. But just to watch something as we go through, and I'll come back to part whole afterwards when we do a broader riff. Just to watch something just really just beautiful, subtle, interesting, and important, without any judgment or anyone saying which one it worked for them or which one I'm about to describe actually was happening. So when a person repeats what you said, you can have one or two experiences. Either